So I think it's the balance between both. Like you don't want to burn yourself early in your career. I think it's important to try to be passionate and try to be to like your work as long as possible, because from what I heard from many seniors, it's at one point in your career you will have a drop down and maybe you will want to do something else.
Please welcome 3D motion designer Maxime Truchon. Maxime is a young designer who has recently broken into the industry and is already winning awards for the work he did after taking our Styleframes course taught by zaoeyo. His overall dedication and curiosity towards his craft is infectious, as I'm sure you'll see in this episode, and it also highlights the bright career he has ahead of him. In this episode, discover how Maxime's laser focus towards his career helped him navigate a tumultuous 2020, his insights into the pros and cons of working in a studio, and how he's trying to develop his skills further. Let's go. Perfect. And how has 2020 been for you so far? An eventful year across the globe, but I guess for artists in particular and creatives in general, it's quite a weird one because I guess a kind of year like this maybe has opened doors or other opportunities or even time to just even work on things than we maybe never had before. So let's go straight into some heavy topics straight away. How has your 2020 been so far?
So far, it has been quite weird indeed. I have some win and some lose. So to summarize a bit my year, this year, not so long ago, I was still a student studying at NAD school, which is quite a big VFX school in Quebec
Cool.
in Canada. During my study, I've been hired at Moment Factory, which is a big studio that do projection shows and stuff like that.
Nice.
I've been hired as a junior since I was still in school, but with
Mhm.
COVID, the entertainment industries was hit quite hard. So they basically they fired me and
Oh
another
no.
and a few other junior. So I've been for around 3 months, I think, without a job.
Oh wow.
Uh, but yeah, at least I have some money on the side to be able to not work for quite a long time.
Cool. That's
And
nice.
like I quit with a good relation with my boss.
Sure.
Some of them did some recommendation letter for me,
Oh,
so I
that's
could
good.
find another job.
Yep.
And they told me that they really wanted to continue to work with me.
Mhm.
They thought basically that in during summer they will be able to hire me back, so I keep in touch with the HR and these boss.
Uh-huh.
And I told myself I will not try to find any work until the summer.
I see.
But I really wanted to work in a studio because I didn't feel like I was still able to freelance by my own.
Okay.
So what I did is I searched for a few studios in Montreal that I'd like it to work to prepare myself to send my portfolio. I had two studios in mind, but before this moment, one of them contacted me. They uh, they wanted me to work with them. So I had an interview. They liked me. They tried me on a project and they hired me. So
Nice.
basically, I lost my job, but I won a new one.
Mm.
And right now, I'm working with them for 6 months, I think. It's been quite a nice journey, and
Nice.
I had a lot of fun. Like projects are really cool.
Cool. And that's a gimmick, right?
Yeah, gimmick
Nice.
studio.
Nice. And what do you gimmick work on?
Gimmick work on commercials. Like I do 3D motion design.
Mhm.
Uh, Last project we did, if I remember, was a commercial for Ford. Uh,
Oh, nice.
yeah, so I basically, what I do with them is mostly texture and shading, lighting.
Mhm.
And right now, I'm moving a bit towards doing their style frame for all their project.
Cool.
So yeah, that's pretty nice.
And um, how many projects have you worked on in these 6 months? Like, do they vary in time, or are the deadlines pretty tight?
Okay, so I work on a lot of projects.
Hmm.
Usually, deadlines are 2 to 3 weeks, and
Okay.
we are usually 2 to 3 3D designer on the projects.
Ah, cool.
I work also on a show which will be released next year. So that's a long project, and
Sweet.
I do some stuff for this also.
Wicked. And so you said you were studying only recently. So were you still studying this year, would you say, at the VFX school?
Yeah.
And
So
have
I
you
was
graduated now?
No, basically, I think it's been 5 years that, or 6 years that I do After Effects, and I learn the field.
Hmm.
And it's been 2 years that I do 3D motion design daily
Mm.
just for fun, and also in internship.
Hmm.
So I finished a college in a domain that was completely out of motion design.
Hmm.
I was studying in web design and web programmation,
Hmm.
and when I graduated, I knew I wanted to do some VFX. So
Hmm.
I went to this school, but after a year and a half, I still hadn't learned anything because of my advance in self learning
Right.
and with my internship. And I was up at a point where a mini cool project was coming at the studio,
Hmm.
and I felt like I will learn pretty much everything at the studio and not at the school.
Mm.
So I decided to be a self-taught motion
Hmm.
designer and quit the school.
And has that decision has that decision felt justified since? Like, any regrets since? Because it's a big decision to like want to, let alone just education, but to quit anything that you've obviously started, and I'm sure it would have
Hmm.
cost money as well. So there's always that, like, well, I've paid money for this. Is it worth quitting, or should I see it through? Um, so I guess it wasn't like a decision you took lightly. But again, you've made the decision, and looking back now, is it something that you regret, or is it perhaps not something that should be referred to as like a regret? Is more a case of, would you say that was the right decision on your path? Would you say?
Yeah, surely when I took the decision, I had a bit of fear
Yeah.
to take the wrong one, but like I decided to 2 weeks before to really take the time to can I say that? Like I really took the time to think about it
Mm.
and be sure that it was a good decision. So I reached a few motion designer and my old boss to ask if they thought it was a good decision.
Hmm.
And they told me that they think it was something that could be good for me.
Hmm.
So after 2 weeks of thinking, I decided to take the decision with a lot of fear. And
Mm.
so far, I think it's the good decision. I learned a lot of things in 6 months at the
Mm.
studio, way more than I learned in 1 year at the school.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I
I
was actually
think it's the
going
good decision.
to ask the same thing. It's like, obviously you were in a situation where you was learning in an educational institution, so there's curriculum, certain topics to learn, etc., etc.
Mhm.
And I guess it's all kind of, because of the nature of it and the way it is, it's all structured, and like everything has its time and its place, and then you move on. And then obviously when you work in industry and then with clients and obviously in the studio, it's, I guess, like a different pace. It's a different kind of speed that things go at. It's the different kind of dynamic, the way things work. Projects come, projects go, things happen out of the blue. So I can only imagine that the learning curve just to even adapt to that kind of environment is obviously extreme. And then I guess working on live projects, versus working on, say, ones for assignments? Like, have you noticed a major difference in those? And has your approach been any different? Or would you say the way you work again as a student, working on assignments versus working for your employers was the same?
Yeah, I won't lie. My creative process changed a lot between school project and client project.
Mhm.
Just because when you work on a school project, if you don't like the idea midway or you're not able to achieve your goals midway in the project, all you have to do is just to change the concept or the
Mm.
art direction or just the idea, and like you're good to go, and you still can have a good mark because there nobody that need this project beside you. But
Yeah.
when you work with clients, if the clients approve the project, you absolutely need to do that. So the way you create project and you tackle project like change a lot. Basically, uh, like you cannot just go on big creative journey and just do
Mm.
whatever you want. You really need to stay to the style frame, stay to the paper that the client give you. So
Yeah.
yeah, like it's quite different, but it's something that the school prepare you quite well,
Oh, nice.
uh, because you have a guideline when you have a project. I don't know if they want you to create an animation about I don't know, ramen or whatever.
Mhm.
You will have some points to in the checklist, and you have to have all the points to have a good mark. In the
Right.
end, it's quite similar in
Ah, I
a
see.
client project. Like the client wants things, he wants check marks to be checked. So in the end, like school prepare you quite well for that. But on other side, there's adaptation to have.
Cool. And 6 months have passed now since you've been working in studio. Um, what major change have you noticed about yourself? Maybe perhaps in terms of your approach, your mentality, or even just like skills, specifically based on like what you've done working in studio. Like, what have you seen that's been the most drastic change?
I think the most drastic change was the improvement of skills that I lacked a bit at school.
Uh-huh.
Like on the project I did when I was learning, I was not doing the animation, for example, and that's something that I lack quite a lot. Like I'm pretty good to do shading, lighting, compositing,
Yep.
but animation is something that I didn't really did at all anywhere anymore.
Hmm.
So when I went to, full time at the studio, uh, I had to do quite a lot of animation, and
Yep.
so this was like the it was burning with fire. I think it's the expression. Uh,
Yes.
so basically, I had to improv by myself, and I did some research online, and that's something I think I will try to learn by myself. So
Mm.
yeah, I improve on a lot of aspect that I was lacking.
And those areas where, again, you said you were lacking and the project required it, um, was it something that you volunteered to do on the project, or was it a case of like, this is what's needed? Um, you need to do it. And then, therefore, if you don't do it, you don't get the work kind of thing. Is that how it was? Or was that something that was more a case of you were just ambitious to try and do maybe as much as possible, or perhaps just do whatever the project was needed?
It was something necessary to the project.
Hmm.
Like I had to do some animation, but my coworkers and the art director knew that I was still a junior. That
Hmm.
I lack our animation wasn't my biggest skills.
Hmm.
So they tell to me you have to do the animation, but if you are unable or if you need some help, we are here
Oh,
to help you
nice.
out. So in the end, like still a it was still like an environment. How will you say that? Like I was like in a square box, so
Yes.
like it was still like quite light in problems if there was problems.
Mm. Now that's cool actually, because it's a case of, on one hand, it's in encouraging you and maybe like say even pushing you in that way where to expand your skill set, which probably would have done anyway. But I guess on live projects is there's always that different kind of mentality and that feeling, knowing that it's not a case of it's just for you, it's for somebody else. But then also you know that like they said, if it's a case of if it becomes maybe overwhelming or it's just not clicking, then you still got that like security to fall back on and it can be still resolved. But I'm sure you'd agree that the only way to really learn, not so much quickly, but maybe to really learn the importance of processes and certain workflows is by doing it on live projects. Um, so you mentioned that obviously you're a junior. Is that technically what your job role is still at the moment? 6 months on?
Yeah, so still now I'm considered as a junior. I
Okay.
won't lie, the studio is quite small, so I do like the job of a lot of motion designer will do,
Mhm.
usually more at the mid. But like I said, maybe I'm how I could say that. Like I have quite good skills in
Yes.
shading and lighting. Like I know how to do texture and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
And on this aspect, on my side personally, I think I'm more like a
Mm.
mid. But
Cool.
I lack quite a lot of skills in client management,
Right.
in speed, in a lot of stuff. And as such, I'm still a junior. So,
Got it.
like on the work side of that, when I have to do style frame, and it's more like R&D and pre-production,
Hmm.
I do more stuff that a senior or a mid will do
Right.
because it's like we have more time. The client didn't see the project, the style frame and the mood board,
Hmm.
so we still have to, we can still change. So like I'm doing more stuff, more advanced stuff. But when we are in production, I will do stuff that junior will do
Got it.
usually.
Cool. And just for people who are maybe not familiar with the certain roles, um, so you classify yourself as a motion designer, correct?
Yeah.
And what, in a quick synopsis, what does a motion designer do?
So a motion designer basically is a graphic designer that animate stuff.
Hmm.
For example, more often than not, the work will be done on commercials or shows. Basically, all the graphics you see on YouTube, TVs, or during live shows. Uh, it can be 2D or 3D.
Hmm.
Usually, someone will specialize in either or do both.
Hmm.
For me, for example, I just do 3D. And the software we use are After Effects and C4D.
Hmm.
Often, motion design will turns around simulation, particles, and stuff like that.
Cool. And you mentioned obviously the roles as well. Like, so, um, in terms of your role, obviously on paper it's junior, but like you mentioned that
Mhm.
depending on the task at hand, you maybe would operate someone like who's a mid or even a
Yeah, that's it.
senior. Is that quite a common structure in studios? And again, would you be able to, again, for people who are not familiar, list the different types of, I guess, would you call it classifications that an artist or a designer could have in studios?
Yeah, it's a classification.
Mhm.
Uh, how I understand the classification, because I'm still new in the industry and I have a lot of things to learn, so
Mhm.
maybe I can be wrong.
Okay.
But usually a junior will be someone that is out of school and have a lot of things to learn still in on the job,
Yeah.
and usually they will get to the classification mid when they will reach 3 to 4 years of of working in the industry. And a senior is someone that need no help at all, that can
Hmm.
handle project by themselves. And usually it's someone with 7 years or more. But
Got it.
how I understand that is someone will can grow faster in the industry and become autonomous faster.
Yeah.
So someone can be considered as a senior after 3 or 4 years of working in the industry. But some argue that the classification shouldn't be used because it's like word that mean nothing for
Yes.
some people.
Yeah.
So it depends really of the studio and your working area. For example, in Montreal, every job use this title at my knowledge.
Hmm.
But maybe somewhere else in another region of the world, like the classification will not be used at all.
Got it. Thank you. It's a good explanation. Right. So 3D, that's what you specialize in,
Yeah, that's it.
mainly. When did you first start getting into 3D, and when did you first realize or get the feeling that this kind of field is the one you wanted to earn a living in, start a career in?
Okay. So, like, I have a way to explain that I like to use. So, basically, when I was young, I think at 13 years old, uh, I was watching videos on YouTube and I found a videos of a kid on his bed doing a Kamehameha. This is like a
Yeah.
big laser beam from Dragon Ball
Yep.
Z. And I was like, yo, it's so cool. I want to do the same thing. And in the title it was like written Kamehameha After Effects. So I wrote on YouTube After Effects, and like I fallen on videos of a software. So I was like, cool, I want this software. So I achieved to get the whole Adobe suite CS5.5,
Yeah.
and I started to learn the software. At one point, I began to do to work with After Effects every day to do my own stuff, MLGs to be more specific. It was a form of I think memes video or another form of what we could call gaming montage
Hmm.
that was pretty popular on YouTube. And at one point, I started to do some gigs for my friends. Some started to their YouTube channel, or some started to do to work on Twitch. So I began to do some uh, gigs for friends, and I liked that. So it was, I think, in at the beginning of college that I started to do that, and was like, I like that. Maybe it could be a job. I should like learn a bit more about the field.
Mm.
And at one point, 2 years ago, I was pretty much able to do everything I wanted in After Effects, at least the things I like it to do and the things I wanted to do in my life. So, like, how I like to explain that is if like motion design or the field is like a building. I felt like I reached the second floor and there
Mm.
was nothing more to learn or to do. Like I was stuck there. And
Yeah.
at one point, I saw C4D, and I told myself, why not trying to learn the software? And at this moment, it was like if in this building I found a new staircase,
Yeah.
and like while entering that, I realized that I had 300 other stage to ascend. So like I was, wow, cool, that's really nice. There's so much nice stuff to learn. This is what I want to do. So I've been doing 3D every day for the last 2 years,
Nice.
and now I'm working in the field by being passionate about the software, basically.
That's it. And like, um, in terms of your process now, obviously you've got the foundation of After Effects. Is it a fusion of both now with that and 3D, or would you say you're more definitely 3D? Obviously, you mentioned that at work you're mainly specialized like in lighting and shading, so that's clearly more on the 3D side. Like, do you tap into the stuff you did with After Effects much, or has your process, your mindset, and obviously your skills pretty much shifted heavily over to 3D now?
Yeah, so right now I my time is passed pretty much in both software
Mm.
equally. So I will do my stuff in 3D. And for example, when I do style frame for personal project or for the work, I will render out the picture in EXR with pass, and I will pass as much time in After Effects to do color correction,
Mhm.
to use the pass to and some part of the renders, and basically the work I do now in After Effects is a bit different than what I was doing in the past. But what is funny is the type of work I was doing only with After Effects can be compared to 3D compositing, but only with 2D
Yeah,
shape layers. So
nice.
yeah, the knowledge and the skill that I learn moved pretty smoothly to when I started to do 3D.
Cool. And with so specifically at the moment, um, would you say the main two softwares that you spent, I guess, the most time on and perhaps dedicated a lot of time towards perfecting, would you say that's mainly After Effects and Cinema 4D, or are there any others?
Yeah, so the two main software that I passed the most time was has been After Effects and C4D.
Hmm.
But right now I'm learning a lot of Houdini.
Yeah, Houdini is
That's a
awesome.
software like I think will be quite prominent in the industry in a few years,
Uh-huh.
and I think it's a skills that is as much necessary to learn than Unreal Engine.
Yes.
Uh, so yeah, I'm pretty much learning on a lot of Houdini right now,
Cool.
in the hope of being able to work with that at the job. But right now I'm working with that at the job. I'm just not as good as some other worker.
Hmm. And how did you? Because like with a lot of software, and even like just to learn Squid, you always get a lot of questions from like when it comes to software, like how easy is it to learn, or what's the process behind it? And quite naturally, like if you open any of these softwares, if you're completely unfamiliar, it can be quite daunting, and it's not very straightforward in terms of like how do you get started, where do you begin, and then there's a lot of buttons, a lot of switches, etc., etc. So there's the steep learning curve can be quite intimidating for people. Also, it can be maybe not so much intimidating, but it can cause people to perhaps lose patience, or it can just be simply frustrating. And then when you're trying to learn or maybe work on something, that time used, or if that time you're using is ends up being frustrating or you're not getting results, it can be quite off-putting and you tend to just leave it. Now, After Effects is a quite powerful software because it's used within the industry. Same with C4D. Um, how are you when it comes to learning those softwares? Like, what was your process like in terms of picking them up? Like, was it something that you found difficult, or do you have a different approach to learning software?
So how I learned both software was practically only with free stuff. So right now we are quite living in a nice period of time for our industry because C4D and After Effects has a lot of tutorials online on YouTube, on Vimeo. So
Mhm.
it's super easy to start learning, and there's as much free tutorials for beginner stuff, extremely beginner stuff, to advanced stuff. So
Mhm.
like it's really a great period to start learning and wanting to work in the field. So personally, until recently, I only learned with free YouTube tutorial.
Yeah.
Also, rediffusion from talk at a big motion design event such as SIGGRAPH or I think it's EFTC Toronto,
Yes.
and
Yes. Yes.
also by back engineer some behance posts, like just by looking at the style frame and trying to understand how they did the
Mm.
shot. And for your other question, what was it? I don't remember, sorry.
So like in terms of the tutorials, Did
Mhm.
you rely heavily on them, or are you somebody who, even if you were just given no tutorials and just had the software open, like would your approach be to just click everything and find out what happens? Or I guess a simpler question would be: do you find joy in using these softwares, or are you somebody who just wants to get the result and get out?
Okay. I think if you want to work in motion design, you need to be passionate about your tools.
Mm,
Like for me, working in C4D or After Effects, it's a lot of joy. Like I really like to work with that. When I'm in the software, when I'm playing with the tools, like time pass extremely fast. Sometimes like
hmm
I start a project or an ID, and it's like 7 p.m. And when I look at the time clock, it's like already 4 a.m.
My
Like
goodness.
if time flies super quickly when you're in the software, you know it's your field and you need to work in that. So for tutorials, what I like to do, it's been quite a long time since I followed one,
Hmm
but when I started out, I was like following every clicks and
Right.
posing and trying to understand. But I always try to do something by my own after the tutorials,
Mm,
maybe by changing the noise or by taking what I learn as the start and pushing the project a bit forward. I think it's something essential to do when you work with tutorials, especially when you are a beginner. Because if you just like follow the clicks and the button, you will learn nothing.
mm.
Like everything will go out of your head like extremely fast. You need to try to understand what the guy is doing, and a way to do that is just by trying to take the video, what you learn, and doing your own stuff with it afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's a definitely a great approach, and what a lot of, I guess, successful artists have done repeatedly. And I guess another, just to add on what you were saying as well, is it's very important to try it your own way with your own approach, just learning using that new technique. But I guess it's I'm sure you'd agree, when you do spend time in the software package, like you mentioned, it can be, like a full day shift, like a full working shift that you spend from like 7 p.m. to like 4 a.m. That's like a technically a full day's worth of work, just on working on a software, or just experimenting around. Um, all of that time and all of those little, where all the little hidden tricks are, or maybe the little tools that could do certain things. Um, they can all feed back into the work you need to do. I mean, like for example, when you've been posting up your work, I've always had a look, and I've always been very impressed by the level of quality you get in there in terms of like the looks, and in terms of the 3D side of things. You can clearly see it's not just a couple of clicks. You've clearly spent time working, say, a particular asset to get a certain look, to the point where you can't even tell, I guess, what tool was used. And I guess maybe, I'm sure you'd agree with motion design and this kind of industry, there's never a repeated look, in a sense. Like every project requires something different. So knowing what your software can do and where you can push it, is super important. I'm sure you'd agree. Like
Yeah, I
how
agree.
how experimental are you when it comes to learning techniques? Like, do you have a rigid workflow in terms of whatever project comes in, whatever brief comes in? Do you know that, okay, once I've got my idea, I'm gonna go this way and that way, and then I'm gonna get to my result? Or do you do a different approach which some artists use, where it's more like, even though you kind of maybe know where you want to go, you still prefer to maybe explore, experiment, try a new tool that you never tried before to see what it yields? Like, what's your, I guess, your workflow? What's your approach when it comes to tackling projects?
So my personal workflow is a bit different than the workflow I have at the work.
Mm,
I know a lot of people, what they like to do is to like do one render every day, and I mean each week they are like, okay, I want to learn sim simulation,
mm,
water simulation, or I want to learn I don't know, procedural renders. So for a week they will do a render every days, and they do that all years long. Me personally, I don't like that. Like I'm not a fan of that
Hmm.
because if you do one render every days, if you take like more than 1 hour for your render, uh, like you will burn out quite easily.
Mm.
So like and just passing 1 hour on a project, yes, maybe you will learn something at the end of the week, but the project you did can't really be put in a portfolio or like on a website, because beside Instagram, because it's quite a quick project, and all you can do is sphere, cube, and really simple stuff.
Hmm.
Personally, when I want to learn something new, maybe recently I was quite a lot in environment design.
Hmm.
So what I like to do is to setting a goal. I don't know, in 3 months or 4 months. That's my deadline,
Mm.
and do a short film. So something that will have a length of 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, and like work every weeks on the short film, but taking the time for each shot to be like quite good, and to take the time to learn the thing and to create something beautiful. As such, instead of having only renders that can be put on Instagram, I can have renders that can go on my portfolio, on my Behance account,
Hmm.
on my social media, and get some attention, and maybe get some work opportunities from that.
Nice. I think that's a fantastic approach, and maybe that is the best approach overall. You mentioned yourself, like you done every day for like a couple of years. You said, and like consistently. Is that something you still do, or is that kind of ended now?
No, basically, at the point I was doing weekly, I think. I never
Mm.
did every days, but I
Oh,
was
okay, okay.
doing,
But
but I
was it
was
like
doing,
a regular thing, right? Like non-stop
yeah,
whenever you
yeah,
had a chance. Got
yeah.
it. I got it. Okay.
So at one, basically, I was opening my software every days,
Hmm.
but not just to do one renders. It was for a long-term project.
Sure, sure.
So
Okay.
yeah.
So that's something you've done from an early stage then.
Yeah, so as soon as I started to learn After Effects and or NC3D, it's something I've been doing for quite a lot of years. So for at least 3 or 4 years, I open my software personally on personal stuff every weeks.
Brilliant. And um w- would you say like doing that, because I'm guessing obviously a lot of changes going from like, education to being in the school to obviously working freelance and working for clients and now in your studio, all of that in between. I'm assuming that you were doing all of this on the side as well. Like, did that ever become too much, or do you have a solid workflow when it comes to this?
Yeah, so I really like to work with with the software. So it has never really been too much up to recently, because now I work on projects, and often we will need to work past 5 p.m.
Mm.
So what I like it to do is was telling myself to work at least 1 hour or something to learn something new, or just
Hmm.
to watch BNs, or just 1 hour per day in my personal time to interest myself in motion design or in the industry. But
Nice.
now it's been a bit like harder to do that, because often I have long day of work, and when
Hmm.
I come home, like I don't want to hear or to think about
Yeah.
motion design.
Yes.
So now I do it lesser and lesser. But
But
it was something I was doing a lot when I was
yeah.
still learning and not in the industry.
But now that you, I guess, say doing it, not the output is not as much as it used to be before. Would you say the quality of work that you're working on now has dropped, or would you say it's increased?
Mm. Uh, I think it continues to improve,
Mm.
just because I was the time I was passing on personal stuff and learning is now translated in work
Yeah.
I do at the studio. So basically, I don't need now to do this stuff, because I'm learning a lot at the studio, a
Mhm.
lot more than when I was working alone or on school stuff. So basically, the way to improve and to continue to learn has shift in another way.
Mm. And um, touching upon, I guess, like it segues nice into a different topic in terms of just how to manage workload. I'm sure you'd agree. And as you mentioned Houdini earlier, like that's something that I'm getting into as well. For the same reasons you mentioned, and even like just the fact that it's a super interesting slash very powerful software. So even like as a hobbyist, it's just something that you can spend a lot of time in. But nevertheless, it's a case of trying to find time to do all these things. And the point I'm trying to get at is when it comes to, I guess, just the 3D world and just creation in general, there's just so many things to not even learn, but even to consume as well. That you could be easily tempted to constantly try to make sure you're either on top of things or constantly putting any time you have spare into that. But then at the same time, like you mentioned, when it comes to working, whether it's mentally or physically or both, it can just get quite tiring as well. And a lot of the times you hear the sentiment that when you're not doing anything that's linked to, I guess, your craft or pushing yourself, it just feels like it's time wasted. But nevertheless, being able to distance yourself and resting and maybe switching your brain off can make you twice as more powerful and efficient than being constantly around it. Like what are your thoughts on that? So now that obviously you mentioned that, I guess it has changed for you because that time you used to spend on working on these things is now more put towards work. Like, is that something that you just let naturally happen, or is that something that you had to tell yourself to switch off when it's necessary to?
I think it's something that went by itself. Like the more and more I was working at the studio, the lesser and lesser I was like doing in my personal time,
Mm,
uh, 3D stuff related. But in the end, I think when you are young, especially,
mm,
it's important since you don't have family, you are passionate about your work, you want to learn a lot of things. I think you still need to continue to push and to learn. So basically, yes, during the week I don't really like interest myself in my personal time in 3D stuff. But the weekend, it's particularly it's particularly the only stuff I do. So I will browse Behance, I will try to push personal stuff, I will try
mm.
to learn new skills. So I think it's the balance between both. Uh, or like you don't want to burn yourself early in your career. I think it's
Yes.
important to try to be passionate and try to be to like your work as long as possible, because from what I heard from many seniors, it's at one point in your career you will have a drop down and
Mm,
maybe you will want to do something else, and the goal is to push that the forward away as possible, and
yes.
to like and to not be born too much, so you can pass through and continue to live from what you like.
Yeah, I think it's very wise. And I think it's great to hear that you subscribe to that like sentiment. And it's also important to be aware of just knowing that um again, you can, like we mentioned earlier, that you can just keep constantly doing it and working on it and etc etc. But then, there's always tomorrow. And again, just having that break, resting is fine. So you mentioned obviously like you're taking advice from senior artists and all that kind of stuff as well. It also looks like you definitely heed advice, which is very important and good to see, because um myself included, I'm sure there's always been a time where maybe earlier on in careers, or maybe just even earlier on in life in general, that you'd hear an advice but you just either dismiss it or ignore it, thinking that that's not going to affect me. But then when it happens, you all automatically recall that advice like it was just given to you then, and thinking, oh, I wish I had listened. um who do you look up to, or who are your inspirations in terms of like examples to follow as professionals?
Mm. Uh, there's two CG artists that I like a lot. As mediators, Ashtorp is quite an inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
The way he speak about the craft is incredible. It's like quite inspiring
Totally.
on his journey, on how he is passionate about his work, on how he will do everything for the work. And on
Yes.
the other side, there's zaoeyo too, that
Yes.
I really like as an artist. I
Nice.
like is basically he never went to school. He learned everything by himself,
Yeah.
and it is like the biggest example how our work you can be big by only learning by yourself and by being dedicated to your craft.
Mm. In fact, I believe both are self-taught. And yeah, you definitely mentioned two big names right there. Um, and in terms of like work ethic alone, I mean, Ash obviously there's a lot of like content out there in terms of him speaking on his own podcast and other podcasts and Learn Squared and all that kind of stuff. Even obviously his conventions he goes to is a public speaker. He's there's a lot of like his ideas of his journey and his experience out there. And yeah, man, his like work ethic is maybe unmatched or unrivaled. At least it's up there in terms of like an example of what a person can achieve by themselves or with collaborators, just constantly like going and pushing for it. Um, and it's cool, obviously, that both of those guys you mentioned have collaborated on work as well. I believe it was the Akira short, Akira Awaken, that they worked on together as well. So, like, when did you first discover these guys? Like, what was that moment when you first saw their work or heard about them? And you always get that like that moment when you know you're not so much a fan, but you know when you're inspired. Basically, it's like you see somebody or something, and you're thinking, "Wow, I need to be like that person. Or I need to achieve. I need to find out how to achieve that level that they're at." Like, what was that moment for you? What was that moment for you?
So Ashtarp, I discovered his work by searching on Pinterest about portfolio website design, and one of the first link I clicked was his portfolio, and I saved the his website in my bookmarks, not because of the design, but because of his work.
Mm.
I was like, dude, the work is incredible. I searched for him on Behance and I subscribed to him,
Hmm.
and since that, I'm always impressed by his work and I always follow everything he does on the art side. While zaoeyo, it was by browsing Behance at the
Hmm.
point where I was quite a lot on the platform.
Yeah.
And basically, his work was pushed in his feed. I think it was the one of the first title sequences created, something he created personally. You know, the one with the crystal-like insects. I don't know if you have seen this project.
Let me double
Uh,
check. I believe I think I know which one you're talking about, but let me
yeah,
just pull it up and have a look.
but yeah, like the his work was incredible as well, and I decided to follow his work, and I've been interested by following his both career since then.
Mm. And at that point, where were you at in your development?
Oh, I was quite still quite early in my development. I think I haven't 1 year of 3D design
Mm.
in that. Like I just started to learn 3D.
Right, right. And how old are you at that time, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, I was 18, 19 years old, if
And
I
how
remember.
old are you
Maybe
now?
two. Now I'm 22.
Cool. So still quite young.
Yeah.
But like as an 18-year-old, I guess even prior to that, like let's say maybe it was a 16-year-old.
Mhm.
What was your idea of a career like at that point? Like, were you into visuals and making visuals and obviously 3D and CGI. Was you into that at that point in time?
No, at that time I was an hobbyist and I was doing like really kiddish stuff. I was doing gaming montage,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
memes video. So it was not something I was taking quite seriously.
Ah,
And like it was more as a hobby at this point. At 16 years old, like I wanted to be a geologist. Like I really like
nice.
rocks, minerals. And it was something I wanted to do. And like when I was near college, uh like I realized I was really really bad at science stuff. I
Mm,
was not able to hit good marks in physics, in chemistry, in math.
yeah.
So I had to think of another like another profession. And at this point I was like, okay, I like to do videos, I like to do motion design, but at this moment I was not aware that motion design was a word
Mm,
and the name of what I was doing in a sense. So like I'll search online and I discovered a program that was called Intégration Multimédia, or in English I think it's the inverse, so it's multimedia integration.
okay.
So basically, it's programmation, video game design.
Mm,
There's a bit of 3D, there's a bit of video editing. So like, it was the perfect program to discover a profession
yeah.
in the computer industry. So at that point, like I began to do a bit of video editing, a bit of visual
Mm,
effect. It was more like really, really basic stuff that we all were learning at the school.
yeah.
And I was really already doing so this stuff, but for non-serious stuff. So, like on the side of the school, I discovered Andrew Kramers, which is
Yeah.
quite a
Yeah.
big personality in the motion design.
Yeah.
And when I discovered his tutorial, it's at this point that I began to be more serious and to learn like the knowledge needed to work in the field.
Mm. And would you say like is when you like when do you think it started all coming together? Like was it a gradual thing, or was it like a certain project or a moment or an event where you're like, okay, this is it now, this is what I will pursue?
It was really gradual.
Mm,
Like I think the idea to work in motion design uh, went to me, and it's not something that I decided. It's like by always learning, by loving what I do, by working on small project for friends or for me.
mm-hmm,
That like with time. I decided to that it will be my job because that was the thing I was most interested about at that time.
mm. And what like in terms of your career now, obviously you just were in the studio. Like where do you see your career progressing based on how everything is at the moment? Do you have like a plan of where you want things to go, or again, would you maybe want to see it progress again, like in a gradual way, like it has done so far?
Right now, what I want to do is to work and learn as much as possible in the studio environment
Mm-hmm.
to gain the skills to be freelancer in a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Personally, I think my biggest growth and career wise when I will be at my peak will be when I will be a freelancer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my end goal. Afterwards, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would like to like my goals, like many other motion designers, is to work on big stuff like
Yes.
Apple commercial, Google commercials,
Yeah.
Microsoft commercial, like the high end project.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, the studio we get more and more of these stuff.
Mm.
So I don't know, maybe in 4 years or 7 years, when I will be ready to be freelancer, I will realize that all the project I wanted to be as a freelancer, I have it at the studio, and I will just continue to work with them. But right now, I see myself as a freelancer in a
Cool.
few years.
And well, in the first one, I think I want to mention it could be even sooner, way sooner than 7 years, because the way technology is progressing, software is progressing, how easy it is, I wouldn't say easy, but how more accessible it is to develop skills
Mhm.
and how to, I guess, learn as much as they can possibly learn about a certain, um, I guess, subject matter or area or software or technical skill. So it could be a lot quicker than that. You mentioned freelance. Why freelance? What about freelance appeals to you the most? Because it is split. Myself, I'm freelance, and that's something that I always keep an open mind, but it is something that maybe I see myself just staying as freelance because it
Mhm.
just suits more my lifestyle more than anything else. Um, but then there's also like I guess you could call it like maybe a 50-50 split where there's like 50% of people who prefer the studio life, want to be in a studio, and maybe that's the way they get their best workout is by being in a studio environment. And obviously on the flip side is the opposite where people prefer to do that freelance. Like I guess Ash Thorpe is a perfect example. I believe outside of Prologue, he's always been a freelancer, and the level of work he's achieved and the project he's done just speaks for itself. But yeah, just to put that question over to yourself, why freelance?
Uh, because I think it's for the to compare this to the work I do at the studio and the freelance life that I want to achieve. Right now at the studio, I'm working with coworkers, and
Mm-hmm.
the yet I have like some of my ideas it goes in the art direction. The final words and the approval are from someone that is higher in the hierarchy,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also the project that comes. It's not me that decide if I want to work on it or not. For example, maybe a coworker will work on something that I really wish to work, but my boss want me to work on another project that
Mm-hmm.
I'll like less. By being a freelancer, I can choose which type of work I want to do,
Yeah.
and choose how I will grow. And there's also the fact that the art direction is completely done by me. If
Yes.
the work need art direction, it's not for a studio, for example.
Mm. And um, like in terms of freelance, would it more be a case
Mhm.
of just work? You mentioned obviously just basically like the lot of the choice and decisions are down to yourself, in the direction. Would you want to be a freelancer just in terms of working for yourself only, or maybe do you see yourself running your perhaps your own studio?
Uh, right now, I have my roommate that is learning 3D,
Mhm.
and surely we speak a lot about it, and we would like to create a duo or a trio in a few years,
Nice.
and like work as like a collective. I think it's the
Yes,
word.
yes, yes.
Uh, Problem is, maybe at one point, if it goes well, I will create a studio. But personally, I prefer to just be a freelancer,
Mhm.
because if I work in a studio, at one point I will not touch the software anymore.
Mm.
And yet, I like art direction. What I like the most is to work with the tools. Like
Mm.
I like if I just tell people like, yeah, that's cool. No, you need to do this thing, I think I will not be happy. I really need to participate and
Mm.
to touch the craft,
Interesting. I think yeah, that's quite an interesting point because I guess we'll never know how our careers will progress and in terms of like what ultimately where we'd end up as because perhaps like we mentioned now that maybe the tools are the ones where we want to be at, but then maybe we don't realize that we're much better at something else, and that's maybe perhaps better paying, for example. So that could be the reason why you end up on something else. But I
Mhm.
think it's also important to be aware and understand of what you enjoy and what you want to do more of, and obviously um you're clearly in line, yet you're in tune with yourself with that regard, so that's really cool to see. And personally I also believe that the way the nature of things are in terms of like obviously now with the after effect of 2020 in terms of COVID, like how the actually in fact let's jump on that a little bit. So the studio wise, You've been there for 6 months, which has pretty much been during this global pandemic. So I'm
Mhm.
assuming you've been working remotely.
Yeah, so when I've been hired, it was only remotely.
Mm,
Basically, we had to choose between working on our machine or to work like on a software that enable us to control our PC at the studio from a
mm,
distance.
mm.
Uh, and right now, since the situation is a bit better, we can choose between working at the studio or
Cool,
working
cool,
from
cool.
home. But we can only be five acting at the studio
Mhm.
at the moment. Basically, we are 15 employees, so it's the one third.
And
Uh,
sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
mhm. Yeah, and personally, I prefer to. How I work is the morning I work from home,
yeah,
and at noon on my lunchtime, I move to the studio to work all the PM from there.
sweet. And I guess like that. I mean, how have you found that dynamic? Is that something that you were just like? Does that feel natural to you? Because I guess prior to that, it was more in the academic sector. So being in the school, I guess it was kind of a similar setup, perhaps. Um, or is that something that you kind of like? You're not particularly feeling that setup at the moment. You do prefer to be in, in the building, in the studio, with your fellow team.
Mm, I think both have advantage. Like what I like from working from home is the like if I want if like if I want to eat something, I can just go in the kitchen and
Mhm.
eat
Yeah,
something. If I have a question to my roommate or we need something, I don't have to call him. I just walk in his bedroom and tell him.
yeah,
While the loneliness of working from home can be hard. Yet, yes, I have a roommate, but he works too, so
yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
I'm alone. So this can be hard sometimes. While like the thing I don't like from working at the studio is the commute. Like I need to take the metro and walk from my home to there and it's like I think 1 hour loss
Mm,
each day, so it's quite big. While I really like the environment and seeing people, speaking with my coworkers, and just the communication is quite easier. I don't have to press a button to speak with one and wait for him to answer. I can
mm.
directly see if he's already in a meeting or if
Yes,
he's
yes.
like able to speak right now.
Yeah, it's definitely there's clear pros and cons to both, and although I guess individual circumstances will determine which one is right for you, it's clear that not one's better than the other. There's not one perfect way, because there's always going to be that drawback. Like I think you mentioned, the biggest things is more like on the social and the mental side of things, like being able to interact with people and um like you mentioned, just not having to schedule a call or things like that. You can just be like, yo, I need a bit of this, or I need some help on this, and that almost instantaneous feedback you can get. But then obviously on the other side, the nature is shown, like, or the way that the world has gone this year, especially like in the creative community and more so in studios, is that work can be done whilst not being in the same place. And I guess when it comes to budgets and finances and finding out how much money can be saved that way, that's ultimately going to decide the direction that studios will go towards. And maybe it'll meet in the middle, it'll be a blend of both. Like obviously you guys are doing it at the moment, where although it's a limit to 5 people, you can choose between both. So maybe like for some people it would be cool to, okay, for 3 days I'm going to work from home because it's just better for me that way, and then the other 2 days I can be in the studio, and not having that constant, I guess, strict structure. But then to go back to the point we was talking about earlier, is knowing the fact that we can either, like you mentioned, with softwares or equipment, excuse me, projects can be done and work can get done, and people can still be productive. And obviously, you mentioned earlier as well that whether as a collective or maybe running your own thing, you can like work on other projects or work for clients or wherever it needs to be done in a smaller team and still be able to work at a high level. So in terms of the way the future is, and albeit obviously you're very early in your career as well, but nevertheless, it's still like the limitations are still there, and then the opportunities are still there, regardless. Like, where do you see the future in terms of, I guess, as like creatives, not so much in the motion design field, but perhaps expanded as well? Like, do you see even clients having a different approach to when they start looking for work? In fact, have you even seen a different approach from clients so far from what you've seen?
Yeah, for clients, before I think uh, the studio where I worked, like both, it was agencies that were contacting us, and they were like the middlemen between the client and us. And now, more often and more often, it's the client that reach out directly to us. So I think in the future, maybe these middlemen will like go away, just
Hmm.
because the like cash wise it's easy, it's better, maybe not
Hmm.
easier, but it's cheaper. And also for communications it's better. So I think because of that, freelancing will be quite advantageous in the future, because we'll not need these middlemen anymore, and you will be able to work with bigger clients way in a way easier. uh, I think too that the technology wise there will be a shift.
Hmm.
uh, I'm pretty sure real time will be the thing in the future.
Yeah.
So it's quite like the time to learn real time engine. We see Unreal that is used more and more on big production, and also other renderer that is shifting to real time, like
Yep.
Redshift that is developing the Redshift RT,
Yep.
which is basically the real time version of Redshift. And I think also the industry will shift from like easy and fast way to handle projects as the C4D is working, to something more complex but more powerful, like Houdini and Project Neutron from C4D.
Mm. And even like hardware, that's always improving. Like GPUs are getting faster. Hopefully, they drop down in price going forward in time as well. So, it's like, I mean, like you can buy an iPad, like the current model, that's way more powerful than maybe a laptop. Although it can't support the same software, but like in terms of on paper, it's more powerful than maybe a laptop from a few years ago. Um, but like in terms of the technology side, you mentioned
Mhm.
hardware in particular, and also software. You've already touched upon the real time aspect to be an area worth pursuing. I guess purely because it's the speed of things, right? Like clients can see their vision almost immediately, and the fact that it's relatively cheap. Like you don't need to spend thousands of, like pounds or dollars on a license. It's, at least for independent people, it's almost free or very cheap to use and accessible as well. Like where would you like to see things go? And what kind of advancements would you like to see in technology to help yourself as an artist further, but also
Mhm.
maybe to help the industry further as well?
Uh, I think something we need is like easy, like a more easier approach for real time. Like I think real time such as Unreal Engine is near being a production ready and being able to spread across all sphere of motions of industry, such as motion design,
Hmm.
VFX, video, like this video game cinematic. But for me personally, what I had problem with this kind of engine was the complexity of them, because
Mm.
like they are something that is used for video games. So there's many layers of
Yes.
tools, but also there's some aspect that is lacking in the software in the real time engine. For example, since it's for video game, tessellation is hidden, so you need to find the checkbox to enable them. But also like there's some problem. Like if you want to do environment, this is the best time to learn Unreal Engine
Hmm.
because like every tool is there to create photorealistic environment with sky, dome, and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But if you want to create interior environment, the problem is right now we need to bake the lights, so we can have a live preview,
Yeah. Yeah.
like creating environment, and something that I don't like. Like if I have had to do like interior stuff, I will do it in Redshift because yes, render time will be longer, but I will gain speed in creating my scenes because Redshift has the real IPR, which I
Hmm.
see quite instantly what I was doing, while I do interior stuff in Unreal Engine. Uh, like I need to bake the lights and I need to wait a few seconds to 1 or 2 minutes to
Hmm.
see like the final lighting. So it's something that is a problem right now. But I think in Unreal 5 that will be released early 2021,
Yeah.
this will be fixed, or slowly I will get some interest and try again to learn Unreal uh, like next year.
Yeah. It's like that's one, like UE5 is something that I think everyone's got their eyes on. We've all seen the demo and it was super impressive. And they've definitely seemed to have taken a march on, like, I guess the real time field. I haven't played much with Unity so much, but I'm sure you can do similar things, or eventually will end up doing similar things because they both service the same kind of fields, I guess, like making game engines, for example. But perhaps it looks like it will branch off as well. Like I know when you first crack it open, it does pitch it as like you can make games, you can use it for visualization, like for the automotive industry and all that kind of stuff as well. But you definitely touched upon certain areas where there's a reason why it's not super friendly in that regard because of it is a game engine, for example. But clearly you can see like the opportunities are there for them to really refine it as a tool to serve, because literally it could service a vast amount of industries. But like in terms of hardware, like what's your thoughts on hardware? Like, are you someone who is very tech savvy? Like, do you invest a lot of time and obviously money to get a big rig, or like what's your setup at the moment?
Yeah, so I really like to build up my computer. Every time there's like a big generation leap, like every generation of NVIDIA cards or CPU, I
Yeah.
buy a new one.
Mm.
I think right now I invested 7K in the
Okay.
computer.
Yeah.
Like it's something that I like to update regularly because like I do a lot of renders on my personal
Mm.
machine, and like I like when it's fast. So my rig, to summarize, it's I have one 20 Ti 170. I have 64 GB of RAM and like a lot of disk space because when I do a project, often it's 1 or 2 minutes long. And since I output a lot of EXR sequence
Yeah.
and I do a lot of trial and like there's a lot of sequence that I don't use at the end. My projects goes often above the 200
Mm.
gigabytes, so I need a lot of disk space for backups and for production. But yeah, I think in the future, like in the near future, we'll get really fast graphic cards that will compete with render farms, not because of uh, like their speed alone, but because I see uh, peer-to-peer rendering become the thing for GPU rendering.
Mm.
Basically, there's like a bit of trial right now from different companies such as Octane,
Yeah.
but there's like a way to render that is becoming more and more popular. And right now, all it needs is the different software and the different render agent to allow their tools to be used on these render network. But how it works, it's you give a certain percentage of your GPUs in your machine to be used in a network
Hmm.
of a thousand and thousand of GPUs. And how it works is when anybody that can use the network. So if, for example, I have I don't know a render to do, I can just send, just like on a render farm,
Yeah.
my project file, and the network will use a part or all the GPUs available of the network, which is like mine, the one of friend, and the one of like OBS or professional,
Hmm.
and they will render the project just like a render farm.
Mm.
But what is interesting is while you don't render, your PC used by the network, and you gain token to use the network on your side
Yes.
afterwards. So it's like a cheaper way to use render farms and to being able to render like big project for cheap. And I
Mm.
think it's the future. I'm not sure if this will be the way to handle in a few years 3D project, or if it like real time engine will be like the way to render project. I think both can be used in the future, just to see which one will grow faster.
Yeah, for sure. You can clearly see like it'll definitely branch off in both ways. So you'll see projects where they'll just purely heavily rely on real time, and it might become a little industry unto itself where you see all these projects, whether it's games or films or shows or whatever, where they just use real time and obviously it works and it's great. Alternatively, you still have, I guess, like say the current way of workflow, which is still to use render engines um like so renderers and all that kind of stuff just to get the project done. And maybe there'll be a mix in between as well. It'd be interesting to see as well whether which one, um I guess, people who are learning and up and coming will adopt, or which caters to them the most, because obviously there will be the new wave of creatives coming forward and with their new ideas, and whichever one enables them the most will be, I guess, not the most successful one, but perhaps the one that's most adopted because people spend more time on it, for example. But like we mentioned earlier, I just want to spend a bit of time on Houdini because it's just, I think it's a really great tool, because you can almost do anything in it. Like, when did you start getting into Houdini, and where does Houdini fit into all of this that we've just been talking about?
Mm. Uh, I started to learn Houdini and start to be interested by the software. I think uh, in February this year's.
Oh, so it's quite
Uh,
recent.
Yeah, it's quite recent. I knew I had to learn the software for quite a long time. It's
Hmm.
just that I had other things to learn first.
Of
But
course.
what rushed me to learn the software was when I was working at Moment Factory. Uh, One of my coworker, and I think it's a good friend of mine. Like he was pretty much the Houdini FX senior, like the reference when the studio lead he did Houdini simulation,
Mhm.
and like he demonstrated me some of his workflow and the tools, and like I watched him working with the tools and what he was able to achieve with that, and this gave me the kick to start learning the software. And all the studio was managing like going knowledge in the studio.
Mhm.
Basically we had like a list of course with with the studio mail that we could ask to use in our personal time or in downtime at the
Cool.
studio. So, and like at the moment when I wanted to learn the software, they bought the course Stop Being Afraid by Houdini,
Hmm.
which is really a great course. And I decided to follow the course, and like I really loved what I was learning. And at that point, I pushed the software by my own every day since. And like how I see this project in the Houdini in the future. I think it will be quite prominent in every aspect of
Hmm.
our industries. It's already heavily used in VFX. Like every
Yes.
simulation are done with that. I know more and more it's used in the video game industry. I don't know really much about this one, but I know a lot of studio use Houdini for uh, procedural thing. Like
Hmm.
I know Ubisoft for Far Cry 5 use Houdini to generate the map, and so
Yeah.
the map is completely procedural with that. It's quite it's quite interesting. Uh, if you go on Vimeo and you search Houdini Far Cry 5 Ubisoft, there's a talk about it, and it's quite impressive.
Mm.
I think the only field that need more in Houdini is motion design
Mm.
commercial, but it's something that more and more people are interested by. More and more studio see the work from Man vs Machine and other big studio that heavily use Houdini. So more and more smaller studio or studio that didn't use Houdini in their pipeline are adapting the tools.
Do you see it as like, does it rival your workflow in C4D or does it supplement it?
So it's implemented. Basically, when I have simulation or procedural stuff, I will usually do with MoGraph tool. I will instant jump into Houdini. I
Mhm.
will create the network just for the sake of if there's change from the client, it's way
Mm.
easier to make the change. I
Yeah.
will export the procedural thing in Alembic. I will export import back the thing in C4D
Cool.
for shading and integration in the scenes.
Cool. Yeah. Now Houdini, like, it's interesting to see the changes they make, and it is something that, like, I mean, have you been intimidated learning it, or is it something that you, again, you've relished it? Because it is like, if you like, you see the tutorials and all these kind of things, like even the two learn squared courses from Adam Swab, who I believe you C4D before he switched to uh
Mhm.
Houdini. It's like you see it and it's like, okay, the process is simple because you see exactly what's being put in, but I guess it's like, from the other softwares, like I've come from a Maya background, so it's more almost like, clicking, dragging and selecting and all that kind of stuff, whereas Houdini's, I guess, a different approach because you're building networks and it's more graceful perhaps. um
Yeah.
but like, would you say it's more like learning a new language, as simple as that, or like, is it more maybe difficult to, like, what's the learning curve been like for you with Houdini?
Okay, so Houdini, when I first heard it, was from a picture. Basically, it was a graph of our learning curve from different software. So you have like Blender,
Yeah.
which was quite linear. You have
Yeah.
Maya, which was a bit stiff at the beginning and like more linear at the end. And like you have Houdini, which was the graph basically was a cliff with
Yeah.
hangman and peak and pikes. Like so, I was come okay, yeah, the software seemed pretty hard. Like I don't want to touch this at all. And like from many like forums and online conversation, everyone was like, "Oh, Zini is like the magics, black, like it's like black magics. You are
Yeah.
a
Yeah. Yeah.
wizard when you use that. Like super hard." And when I started to learn the software, I realized that okay, maybe in the past when the UI was not as developed as it is now, it was quite hard. But now it's quite easy to learn. Like it's not maybe it's a bit harder than learning C4D and Maya, but
Yeah.
it's still quite achievable. On my side, I add some knowledge of C and I had to program C sharp for
Mm.
many years when I was studying at college in web programmation and video game programmation.
Yeah.
And Houdini use Vex for a lot of stuff. You can avoid this language, but it's quite powerful and it's
Yes.
a good thing to use. And Vex is based on C, so I was not lost at that. So it was
Ah.
something I was already like knowing quite well. And there's also the fact that I had a background in programmation logic,
Hmm.
and Udemy use quite a lot of programmation logic. For
Right.
example, there's like for each, which is a like a like a group of node you can put in that that repeat an action you tell. And
Yes.
basically, this is exactly the same thing in programmation. It's the same name. It's
Mm.
just write it with text instead of using notes. So like I was not lost. Maybe I had some advantage and a
Mm-hmm.
good background to make the learning easier. But I'm pretty sure anyone can learn Houdini. Like it's not that tough. It's you just need like patience because as any software, it can take a long time to be able to work with that and being able to do your own stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's not that difficult to learn. Like anyone can learn the software. Maybe it shouldn't be your first software to learn if you just started to learn 3D, but it's surely something you need to get some interest after maybe a few years of learning the field.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with the new 18.5 release, they do seem to be heading more towards a more artist friendly, like maybe not so much a UI, but like in terms of an approach. Like it's more a case of just click this and, or maybe you can do it through just by connecting nodes as opposed to using Vex. Although I believe that if you do know, like you mentioned, programming language and coding and stuff, you can get some crazy results from Houdini. Maybe you can get the maximum power out of it because it does seem like that is the most efficient way to get results because you can just write a few lines of Vex and you can get like crazy amount of results as opposed to connecting like 100 nodes together. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, it is like it's not going away for sure. And you mentioned before, like went to a few conferences a couple of years ago, and are you familiar with Axis Studios?
What type of work they did?
They
Maybe
they
as
do like a lot of commercial work as well, but they do a lot of shorts and stuff. Like so I think they did a lot of shorts for like Destiny and loads of other things.
yeah, yeah,
They're like they're a bit like Frame Store and the Mill and all that kind of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But they had a booth there, and speaking to a few people who either have worked there or do work there, like I believe they use Houdini either heavily or almost exclusively when it comes to making their projects. So listening to that, I was thinking, okay, so people are using this as like a huge pipeline. And you mentioned before, like Far Cry. I remember watching something on the Spider-Man game where they used Houdini to basically generate the streets and the damage of the road and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely is. Okay, I guess it depends on your field and what you want to achieve, because I'm sure you'd agree as well. Like as long as you know a tool really well and you know how to get a result, it doesn't really matter. But at the same time, certain fields do require certain skill sets. But Houdini is something that seems to be adopted more and more, and the way they keep developing it, they want to be adopted more and more. And the cool thing as well is, like you mentioned with your workflow, like you go back and forth a lot between C4D and Houdini as well, is that it can be quite integrated or easy to integrate with your software of choice, most likely as well. So yeah, it is one to definitely keep an eye on. And yeah, so recently you've won an award. Would you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I won the Motion Design Awards video of the day. Basically, it's a Motion Design Awards, uh, quite popular at the moment. How it
Mm-hmm.
works is you have the website with a jury from a quite renowned motion designer, and if you can upload your project on the platform, and the jury will select a few. There's also a vote of the public that count, but basically it's mostly the jury vote that make the that give you an awards or not.
Mm-hmm.
So like I heard about it, I knew anybody could like put their work there, but it needed quite a like it needed a good level of skills to get an awards because a lot of big name put their project there. For example, one of the last project of from zaoeyo and his team on I think it was like an intro or an announcement for an sport event. It was quite neat.
Mm-hmm.
Was uploaded there at the same time as me. There's also already been shoot that put a lot of their work, like their shoes commercial, there to
Mm-hmm.
try to get an hour. So it's like the big game, But anybody can put their work there and try to win an hours. And like I was telling myself, hey, I have nothing to fear. I have nothing to lose.
Yes.
Let's put my work there and see how it goes. Like I was sure I wasn't getting anything, but I was like, if it could be fun, maybe I will win something.
Mm,
And I uploaded the work. There was the 7 days of vote, and when the 7 days ended, I was surprised to have quite a nice score. And how it works is every month, each days, there's like a video that is selected
mhm.
from like the hundreds and hundreds uploaded. And I think basically you have 21 days to win an award, minus the 7 days, so
Mhm.
it's 14, I think. And I won the awards 4 days after being able to work on awards,
Sick.
so
And
that's quite nice.
the project was none other than your amazing work on the Styleframes course, right? From Zayo himself.
Yeah, it was the basically the animation I did from the style frame I created in the course.
Yeah, I remember like when we dropped that and work started coming out, you were one of the a lot of work. There's a few courses where like it takes a while for the work to come through because obviously the nature of the subject matter. And Zaya's course is one where it's like almost immediately work was getting kicked out from a lot of like students, for example, and yours was one of the first ones. And I remember just keeping an eye on it, looking at it, and seeing it progress and develop and get to the point where it was awesome to see. So like, what was your? How did you firstly find that, and why did you choose the project that you did? Like, why did you go for that subject matter? Because it was the Louvre,
So
right? It was like an exhibition in the
yeah,
Louvre.
it was
Exactly.
an exhibition. Uh, Basically, it's been a while that I wanted to learn from zaoeyo.
Yeah.
Like, I really like to do style frame, and uh, I wanted to achieve professional skills. And like when the course was announced, I was like, "Yo, it's exactly the thing I needed and the thing
Mm-hmm.
I wanted." So as soon as it's dropped out, I bought the course, and it was at a time where I didn't have any work to do, so I just uh, like watched the videos and did the project
Yeah.
in my free time because I don't have anything to do beside this free time. And like by seeing the course and by going through, uh, like I knew I didn't wanted to do like a film title sequence or a video game title sequence.
Yeah.
Uh, I wanted to do maybe something more like an event opening.
Mm-hmm.
And by seeing the brief, like there was a few words to select from the brief to think and build the concepts. And I saw like I think it was Edo Asia, like and a time period.
Yes.
Uh, like I decided, like after thinking of some concept, I just thought, oh, why not doing like a title sequence for a new exhibit at the Louvre Museum? It was just like an idea that went to my head
Mm-hmm.
like that without any context.
Mm-hmm.
And I began to like do some sketch, trying to think about something. And like I decided to go with the noir field,
Mm.
like the theater you see often in movies that in that time period. And begin to do the side frames. And after some trials, I built what I built.
Cool. And like, the models themselves, where did you
Hmm.
get them from? Were they the ones that
Uh,
like? Because Zero mentions like a place where there's like a lot of free models you can get. Was it from there, or
yeah.
is this your own?
So when I do projects like personal stuff, I always have a small budget.
Nice.
So I bought the model, but they were quite cheap. Basically, for personal stuff, I really like to use CG traders for
Mm-hmm.
3D models because, like, it's the same quality as uh, Turbo Squid, but it's like way, way, way cheaper. Like maybe the same model on Turbo Squid, which will be $200, will
Uh-huh.
be like $30
Right.
on
Right.
CG traders. So I found like this samurai model, uh, but in the end, I didn't like the shaders, and like the course was about lighting and shading.
Yep.
So I just use a no map pathal from the model and did all the texturing and the shaders by myself with the technique I use in the course.
Mhm.
And basically that's it. The models come from CG traders. I'm pretty sure I bought like for less than $50 of model.
Wow.
Like the Samurai was on sale at $25. The building was I think at $5 or $10,
Yep.
and that's pretty much the only model I use. The like the pillar was from the website Zaoeyo gave with a
Yes.
free 3D scan model, and
Yep.
that's the three model I use.
Sick. And yeah, again, it came out great as you can see because you won awards for it as well. Like, how is your workflow adapted since taking the course? Like, did it accelerate in any particular way? Was it something that you were kind of doing at the moment? And how have you applied that? I guess commercially or just even in your own personal development since?
Oh yeah. So since this course, my workflow changed a lot. Like I
Mm.
adapted my workflow with what I learned. Basically, before that, I was not using Styleframe in my personal project. Like I was creating something. Like I was doing first scene, render, do the animation, compositing. Second scene, animate, do the stuff. So in the end, what was happening was that I have like a different style for every shot. So it didn't
Yes.
felt like a cohesive uh, group of short shot in the film. So now what I do is exactly like Zao demonstrated. I do style frame for each shot. I create like a board with every style frame to be sure that the color are correct, the contrast are correct, and the style like fit in the all the frames.
Hmm.
And afterwards, just like basically, I just adapted the zaoeyo like workflow.
Yeah.
I know the last part is when he show how he animate the stuff.
Hmm.
Like I really like it. I how he create a style frame. Afterwards, he do a previs with a low res render, and afterwards he just render the whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's exactly how I work now.
Cool. And like anything further you'd like to, so with your skill set, and it's been pretty
Mhm.
evident speaking to you as well, and obviously just seeing your work, like you're definitely someone who is keen to improve and just perfect their skills, and also obviously just to develop and progress in general. It's like you mentioned obviously you want to end up freelance also, but in terms of like say workflow, is
Mhm.
there anything that you would like to add to your workflow going forward? I guess that could be answered two ways, I guess, because there's always that one overriding thing. Maybe you say like, I want to direct film, so I'd love to, get workflows that help me towards that. And there's also like that short term thing, like, oh, okay, I could definitely use, I don't know, just for example, how to do fluid sims for the moment. So, like, what is next in line for you in terms of your learning path?
Uh, I think the long-term goals will be to understand how to manage client, how to speak to client, how to pitch, how to know the management stuff of freelance project
Mm,
or creative project. While short term will be to still improve my animation skill and, as you said, to be good enough with UDD to be able to work efficiently with simulation. So basically, I have two skills to learn and to push forwards, I think, and like one big goals to do, and this will be by like being more advanced in the where I work. And at one point, I'm sure my boss will want me to speak with the client and to help them out to pitch, and I think that's how I will achieve this goal.
awesome, awesome, dude. I think that's a great note to end the podcast on. Um, Thank you for your time, for explaining your journey and just your expertise overall. And I definitely look forward to having you on again in the future.
Thank you. It was really fun.
Thanks to Maxime for being our guest. Check out the episode description for Maxime's links and give him a follow. And forge your own dream career by checking out our courses at learnsquared.com. Till next time.